Well, change is in the air. I titled this thing about an hour too early. I was giving it until about 5 o'clock, see what happened. Um, since nothing had really broke by then, I went ahead and titled it something different. But nonetheless, change is in the air. Appreciate everybody that's tuned in Monday Live. Jason Priester of the Clemson Insider. Want to thank our sponsors over at A Glass, longtime name sponsor here. 2 locations in the PD, one in Florence, one in Sumter. Take care of all your auto glass needs. And I don't know what the hell my wife's over there doing, but being loud. Take care of all your auto glass needs. They do replacement, repair. Get yourself a free quote today. myaglass.com. It's official. Even though, I've been hinting it, we've kind of outright said it on the site for a few weeks now that change at offensive coordinator was coming, and it has. About 6 o'clock tonight, the school put out a statement saying that Dabo and Clemson were parting ways with Garrett Riley and Mickey Kahn as well. I don't think anybody was shocked by that revelation. I think pretty much everybody expected that, even those people who were starting to doubt whether he was going to make a move with Riley. The thing there is, with the buyout being what it is, you got to give him every opportunity to try to hook on with somewhere else, kind of alleviate your responsibility in that buyout. Didn't work out. Let him stay on through the bowl game and then make the move, because I don't think anything could have happened Saturday in that game to change the outcome. Let's just put it that way. I don't think if Clemson goes out and lights up the scoreboard for 30 points and 400 yards, that I still think we're sitting here today talking about the same thing. I think this is something that's pretty much all but decided weeks ago. Question now becomes, who do you turn to? When you bring in Riley 3 years ago from TCU, they're fresh off a national title appearance, or I have no idea what that sound is. Fresh off of a national title appearance. Even though they got their butt cut in that, good Lord, even though they got their butt cut in that national title game. Anyways, I think, I'm not saying everybody, but I think a majority of the people thought that was a pretty good hire, man. I mean, the guy's coming off winning the Broyles Award. He's had a lot of success with the previous quarterbacks he worked with. And let me go ahead and add in that Riley is Riley is the quarterback coach. I see so many people that don't see online making comments and stuff about Clemson's inexperienced quarterback coach. I mean, where's the line? How many years does it take to be considered experienced? The guy just coming off winning the Broyles Award. He worked with a couple of really good quarterbacks under Sonny Dykes there. I don't know of a whole lot of people that thought that was a bad hire. I mean, I know there were a few here and there that questioned it because of what happened in the national title game, which I thought was pretty short-sighted. I don't think you ever make your decision based off one game or one outcome, particularly when you're playing somebody that's just that much better than you. But anyways, that kind of brings us to who's next, right? Dabo tends to move pretty quickly in these kind of situations. Generally speaking, he doesn't tend to make a move of this magnitude without knowing who the next guy is going to be. You go back to when Streeter was let go. They already had the next guy lined up in Riley, and heck, who knows if he's not able to get Riley, then Streeter very, very well may have gotten a second season. That was a big part of why he only got one, was letting him, because you were able to get Garrett Riley. So we'll see how quickly they make how quickly they get the next guy in place. I lean towards thinking he's probably not going to be an air raid guy, but that's just my opinion and my gut. But I lean towards thinking that. But we'll see how it goes. And what better way to help attract a new guy than to tell him, hey, man, you can bring in your own quarterback. Our guy's moving on. He's out of eligibility. We're going to hit the reset button here and start this thing from scratch, because that is absolutely the route this program needs to take. No offense to Chris Vazina, but I mean, I don't know that he's the guy that's going to help get this thing turned around and help lead you back to the promised land or back to 10-win seasons or competing for ACC titles. It just is what it is. I'll be the first to admit there's probably still some unknowns there with him, man, but I've seen enough to that leads me to believe that I just don't know that he's the guy. I don't think the guy for next year is on the roster. I've said it many times. So that's another decision that's got to be made. If you look at this roster, man, there's a lot of places that need to be addressed through the portal. To me, it just kind of starts with quarterback. Man, you look at that secondary, you look at the linebackers that's left, and you look at the linebacker play Saturday outside of Sammy Brown. It left a little bit to be desired there in that second half. You got a pretty good look at the depth on that defense, man. And I mean, if you're looking at that game Saturday and saying, hey, man, a lot of this is going to be the starting defense next year, man, does that give you the warm and fuzzies? It doesn't me. I mean, I think you could probably use a couple of guys up front, linebacker, multiple guys in that secondary. There's a lot of places you can upgrade, but again, the biggest thing is going to be who you bring in to replace Garrett Riley. We'll see what they do with Mickey Khan, whether it's somebody already on the staff that they just kind of do some reshuffling or they bring in somebody new. There's a bunch of different ways you can go about filling that role. We already know that Thomas Allen had took over to some of the responsibility with the secondary guys anyways. And Clemson's got like 3 secondary coaches as is. It's got Mickey Khan, who's coaching the safeties, DeAndre McDaniel, who's coaching the nickels, and Mike Reed, who coaches the corners. So, I mean, you can kind of, let's just say rework the way some of those guys, where they or what positions they coach or those kind of things. You don't necessarily have to go out and hire a new safeties coach is what I'm trying to say. You can kind of reshuffle what you got. And I don't think we're done yet. I don't think these are going to be the only 2 moves. I think they might be the only 2 firings. I just don't think they're going to be the only 2 guys on the current staff that aren't back next year. I still think there might be 1 or 2 more that either gets moved into a different role in the program or goes off and takes an NFL job. We'll see what happens. Yeah, I'm not even gonna, if you got to trash talk kids, you got to trash talk, college football. I'm of the opinion, man, if you're gonna type something out you won't say to somebody's face, just at least here, man. I don't care to see none of that crap, man. Anybody to watch that press conference the other day and all you take away from it is his play didn't live up to what your standard, what you think the standard is, and you're ragging on him for crying, man. I ain't got a whole lot of use for you. Matter of fact, now you want to make it racial? Yeah. Understand some players don't work out, but how does Cade come from a 6A Texas football team that was at the time top 5 in the nation and won 3 states in a row, come to Clemson and do worse than high school? How did the same thing happen with DJ? I don't think you'll ever get the full, honest answer to that question. Some guys are cut out. That's even at 6A Texas football, which is arguably some of the best high school ball in the nation. It's a massive jump when you're going from that to being the starting quarterback at a school like Clemson. It's a massive jump, and you know, there as I just think there are a lot of things with Cade that didn't translate to this level. I don't think he always processed what he saw very well. I don't think he always, or let's say, I don't think he always read, the defense as well as some of the better quarterbacks do. I don't think he excelled with seeing some things pre-snap. I don't think he excelled at scanning the field. I don't think he excelled at having that clock in his head that tells him, hey, I've got to get rid of the football. I mean, we saw it Saturday. There were 3 different occasions where he just held on to it too long, knowing you're playing behind a patchwork offensive line as is, and he ends up taking a sack. But I also think at the end of that thing, if you watch that press conference, there's no doubt that guy left everything he had out on that field. I don't think people realize how hurt he's been this year. Not to make an excuse for him, but that's just fact. Guy's been banged up ever since the Boston College game, 3 different injuries. But I also think he regressed a little bit. Is that him? Is that the coaching? Is it a combination of both? I don't know that we'll ever get the full answers to that. And you can say the same thing about DJ. That there are a lot of things that he did well in high school that didn't translate to the college level. And he went on to play under 2 different coaching staffs after he left Clemson and still like the same dude. So, I mean, sometimes an elite level high school guy, it just isn't meant to be for him at the next level. I'm guessing the coaching departures are complete. Why wait any longer and hinder portal? I'm not going that far. I'm not sure they are done. We'll see. I mean, maybe it turns out that they are, but I think there's another spot or two that could end up opening up depending on what happens. And why wait any longer? Because you'd like to avoid having to pay buyouts if you can. That's the number one reason. To eat up your show no, not really. I wish they'd announced it about an hour earlier. I would have titled this thing something completely different. I usually, do this. I usually create it and name it and everything, early in the afternoon. And I waited a long time today, and it got about 5 o'clock because I kept waiting on it. I was, I kept thinking we're going to see it. We're going to see it. Going to see it today. Then by 5 o'clock, I was like, well, I guess we're not going to see it till tomorrow. And then it came out about 6. Maybe we can run the football again. That was one of the biggest sticking points with Garrett Riley to me was, just the unwillingness to commit to the run. I don't care if it's not working early. You can't abandon it totally, especially in a 1-score game. I mean, we saw him do it multiple times, over the season. We saw him do it. I mean, LSU is the one that really sticks out. He did it to a degree Saturday. You playing in that cold weather. You playing in that cold weather, man. Your receivers are having a hard time catching the ball. Just keep banging it, man. Keep banging it. Keep banging it. Keep banging it. We've seen example after an example of teams, and even some Clemson teams that have not been able to run the ball very much over the first 2.5, 3 quarters, and they kept pounding it, and it finally broke some stuff off in the fourth quarter, man. It's always been a sticking point with me, man. I've never been a big fan of his philosophy when it comes to running the ball. he's big on the screen stuff, and I get it. The run game can technically be an extension, or the screen game can be an extension of the run game, but sometimes to me there's a little bit too much screening, and I thought we saw that sometimes this year too. Yes, Darian Mayo did play. I saw him out there. It was more than a few plays. Hold on, I think I got the snap counts right here. Yeah, I just kind of keep right on interrupting me. What you want? Come get whatever you want. Yeah, Mayo played 19 snaps. Not what you need. Why?
I don't know. He said I can't go in there right now.
Yeah, I don't know who they're going to turn to at offensive coordinator, man. I'm not even going to speculate on that. You know, there's a bunch of different directions you can go. That is something I will start digging into a little bit more tonight, to be honest. Yeah, next Clemson definitely got to go get some players out of the portal. Absolutely. Otherwise, you're looking at a similar season next year, in my opinion. Yeah, I know that there was nothing wrong with the play calling at all this year, man. I mean, it was all the quarterback play. Whatever. No, I don't see any way you can do that. Um, I think if the Garrett Riley thing goes, the way you wanted it to go, and he moves on to go do something else, yeah, you can promote within and hand the reins over to Kyle Richardson. In fact, I absolutely think that was the plan. But Kyle Richardson's a big air raid guy, and the way this thing's played out the past 3 years, I just don't see any scenario in which you could feel comfortable doing that the way it's played out. You might have people would be in Dabo's front yard. Our issue has been struggling and lack of player development since Scott and Elliott left. Yeah, look, maybe in some areas, but I don't think there's been any. You're not going to get me to say that I think Tyler Grissom doesn't develop receivers. I think he was left with a terrible wide receiver room. I think Jeff Scott's last batch of recruits were pretty much all busts, and I don't think it had anything to do with who was coaching them at Clemson. Matter of fact, most of them moved on, went to different schools, and were the same guy or even worse at their new stops for as long as they were there. I am of the opinion it took Tyler Grissom about 3 classes to get that wide receiver room back to, where they wanted it. And I thought the wide receivers, despite the fact they didn't want to catch the ball Saturday, were one of the bright spots. I think Antonio Williams is a night and day different receiver as compared to when he was a freshman. I think Bryant Wesco made huge strides. Last year, if he's not running by you, man, he's not getting open. He struggled getting off the line against physical and press coverage. Didn't see a whole lot of that this year. Much better route runner. TJ Moore, same thing. His route running is so much more meticulous than it was a year ago. Still needs to improve in the blocking aspect with a lot of guys, and I'm not saying he's one of them, but with a lot of guys and the wide receivers out there on the perimeter, a lot of that's want to, more so than coaching. It's like I was talking to somebody last night, man, and he flat out said he would never give a coach any credit for good players getting better under that guy, but he'll absolutely give them the blame when they don't develop. I mean, it's a two-way street. At some point, the players got to accept some responsibility too. I mean, don't get me wrong. I still think there's a spot or two on that staff that could be addressed and could benefit from being addressed, but I don't think receivers one of them. I don't think defensive ends one of them. I think the guys that are on the roster outside of TJ Parker this year, who I think he probably was carrying a little bit of bad weight. And I also think teams just kind of figured him out. He didn't have this massive bag of tricks to use as a pass rusher. It was basically a couple of things, and if you figured that out, you can neutralize him. I think Cade Denhoff's become a much better player under Rumpf. I think Will Help looks like a different dude compared to what he was at Purdue. Look at the strides Jaheim Lawson's made since Chris Rumpf got there. I mean, I just think it's short-sighted to say nobody's getting developed at Clemson anymore. Wouldn't name in a new OC before the portal be imported. It just kind of depends on who it is. What if the guy that you're going to get is still coaching, man, and doesn't want to be named before Friday when the portal opens? I mean, there's a lot of variables in play there. In a perfect world, yeah, you'd like to have that in place before the portal opens. But there are ways that you could. Any offensive play, particularly, let's just say you're going after a quarterback. That guy's probably going to want to know who his quarterback coach is. And again, Dabo generally doesn't do these things unless he knows what move he's going to make. So he's at least got a pretty good idea of who it's going to be probably already. And it's not like he can't tell those guys who it is. So, I mean, in a perfect world, yeah, but I mean, I don't think it's something that absolutely kills you either. Do you think Dabo will try to get a big name coach again, or will he try to get a veteran play caller? Yeah, I don't know who he's going to go after, man. All I'll say is you have to go after somebody that's established and who's experienced. I don't see any other way you can go about it. I mean, Clemson's offense, once again, needs to be revamped, just like it needed to be 3 years ago. You're not going to bring the next guy in to keep running what Garrett Riley implemented. So whoever you bring in is going to have to, do a lot of reinstalling of some new stuff. So you need a guy that's been around and done it. Yeah, I do. Why wouldn't I? I don't know of any coach that's been 100% on picking coordinators or picking assistants. I think Dabo's track record of picking offensive coordinators has been pretty good. Riley's really the first, in my opinion, the first one that really didn't work out. I don't know that Streeter really got a fair shake. He was handcuffed by a terrible quarterback who could barely complete a 10-yard forward pass, and only got 1 year in an offense he didn't even install. So Jeff Scott or Chad Morris, let's run it back. I would not be in favor of either of those. Number one, I don't think it's ever a good idea to go backwards, at least 99% of the time. Jeff Scott's never been an offensive coordinator that called plays. He's never been a primary play caller. He's never installed an offense. And Chad Morris, yeah, I don't know, man. I think he was perfect for Clemson when he was here, but I also believe there's a reason why he's not had an OC job in however many years it's been now. No, I do not. Matter of fact, I know what you saw this year was Garrett Riley, man. I mean, is there instances where a head coach is going to override a play call or decide to go for a fake field goal or decide to go for it on 4th something? There's always cases where the head coach is going to make a call here and there, but pretty much what you saw this year was Garrett Riley. The offense, contrary to what some people believe, the offense is not the same offense that was being run before he got to Clemson. Or did some of the plays probably carry over? Absolutely. But you can say that about every offense. I mean, you can dress it up however you want to, but a post is still a post. A slant is still a slant. A 5-yard out route's a 5-yard out route. But there were a lot of differences with, the route trees were different. Heck, even the spacing along the offensive line was different. Clemson was they leaned heavily on the inside zone in the old offense, not so much in the new offense. It was more counters and traps where you had to get the offensive lineman out pulling and stuff. But, I think there was one game, or at least based on, things I've heard, that maybe that somebody else got involved. And it was the second half of the Troy game. And if you go back and watch that game, the second half looked much different than the first half. They leaned on the run a lot more in that second half than they did in the first half. That, to me, that's kind of what, Dabo will want to run the ball. There's your first sign that he's not overly involved the way Riley abandons the run. Yeah, you're not getting Georgia Tech's offensive coordinator because he's already gone to Florida. Now, we had heard that was a guy, that a couple of weeks back, as a matter of fact, right before Florida hired him, we had heard that was a guy that Dabo might have some interest in talking to. But we had also heard that there was a SEC team involved, and, that timing was going to play a big part. And the next day he was hired at Florida. I'm not a pure X's and O's guy. My thought is Riley has a strategy that works, but he doesn't have enough experience to adapt. He doesn't have a good feel for game management sometimes, or at least in my opinion. And his offense works a lot of times between the 20s, but then when you get in the red zone, man, it gets really hard on him sometimes. Again, I'm not a big fan of the way he gets away from the run either. Cade said Taj and Cole Stout were working hard with Chris Denson. Wasn't Boyd's troubles reading defenses the reason why he never made it in the league? Actually, no, that's not really the reason why he never made it to the league. But may want to rethink that room. The guy's redshirting, man. He's not getting a lot of work with the ones and the twos, which is where your quarterback coach is. Somebody else has to go run the drills with him. I mean, it's not this. Taj and Cole Stout have not been in charge of this guy's development. They are just implementing a plan that Garrett Riley has in place. When I go to practice, heck, there's sometimes I see Taj working with helping with the drills, with the wide receivers. He's not the quarterback coach at Clemson. Cole Stout's not the quarterback coach at Clemson. They're assistants. They do what they're told. They implement the plan that their boss gives them. I think more gets made out of this stuff than should be. I think Clemson's probably got way too many people, or at least a few too many people on that support staff. But having a guy like Taj Boyd or Cole Stout working with a freshman who's redshirting, running the drills, I just don't think it's that big a deal, man. I've been to practices and see how they work, and if you go over and watch the first string, the second string, and the third string quarterbacks, it is all Garrett Riley. All Garrett Riley. Have you heard of us going after a QB in the transfer portal? I've never said Clemson was going to the portal for a quarterback. What I have said was I don't believe next year's starter is currently on the roster. And I still believe that. And I don't say that for wishful thinking. I mean, I have a reason why I say that. I mean, that absolutely doesn't mean that's what's going to happen. I'm not, as much as I'd like to be, I'm not a fortune teller, but I do lean towards thinking that there is a very good chance that's the route they go, especially now that they're changing offensive coordinators. That's a recruiting pitch with the next guy. Hey, you get to, come in and maybe even, play a part in hand picking your quarterback. But I've been saying for weeks, I think next year quarterback's not on the roster. Now, maybe I turn out to be wrong about that. It won't be the first time I'm wrong. Won't be the last either, but I do have a reason for saying that. Denson's development needs are in no way limited to reading defenses, though they can still get him. No, I mean a lot of his development still needs to happen with his throwing mechanics. I don't know how apt he is at reading defenses and stuff yet. We just not seen him have to do it. We've only seen him run the ball and throw a few screen passes. Clemson has no big defensive tackles to stop the run. Outside of Amari, I was not overly impressed, with what we saw on Saturday, with Thompson and Heaven Brown Schuler. But you got to, neither of your projected starters for next season were playing in that game, and you ended up losing Brown Schuler. He got hurt and left. But yeah, those guys, they got some work to do, man, if that's who you're rolling with next year. That's why I say you need help at both defensive line spots, interior and at end. Who called the fake punt? Jack Smith checked into the fake punt. That's what Dabo said on the broadcast Saturday at halftime, and then in the post game, he didn't get really into detail about it. He just said he'd own it, but he did make sure to say it was not called by the coaching staff. Not sold on Allen either. I watched several of our stars take backward steps under Allen. I'm still a big believer in Allen, man. I just think Clemson's got some massive holes on the back end of that defense. And when your best pass rusher doesn't come nowhere near to living up to the expectation or playing to the standard, man, it really creates a problem for you. You already got issues on the back end, and when you can't get after the quarterback, you're asking them to cover even that much longer. If he gets the right guys in some of those spots, I think you'll see massive improvement. But man, Clemson's run defense has improved dramatically. I mean, they're I don't know where they're at now. They were top 15 going into that bowl game nationally. Now you just got to get the pass defense short up. Where did the list come from that was released about players? I put that list together. I can't tell you everything now. How is Oklahoma and Virginia doing? What's that got to do with anything we're talking about here? As of right now, there are no press conferences scheduled. And I would not imagine, like, somebody asked me last night about a press conference. If you go back and look at history, Dabo doesn't tend to hold press conferences to announce somebody's getting fired. He just doesn't do it. They do it the way they did today and just put out a statement. You go back to last year, he didn't hold a press conference to announce he was parting ways with Wes Goodwin. They just released a statement. There wasn't a press conference until they wanted to introduce Tom Allen. Actually, I'm a little under the weather, to be quite honest. My kid has brought some kind of bug into my house, and it has landed smack dab on my head. Wish things would have worked out better for Cade. He truly wanted to be at Clemson. Yeah, you could tell he loves Clemson, man. I hate seeing people dog on him. And I ain't going to stand for anybody bringing that racial crap in here. Some guys just don't work out, man, for whatever reason, whether it's his fault, whether it's the coaching, whether it's a little bit of both. Sometimes it just doesn't work out, and it didn't work out for him. You look at him at that press conference the other day, there's no way you can question, his love for Dabo, for the school, for the program. The kid goes out there and leaves everything he's got on the field every single game. And I don't think you can ask for much more than that. People always like to crack on Dabo about, how it's not best as the standard anymore. People need to really research, Dabo's, what he means when he says best in the standard, because it does not mean what most folks assume it means. Everybody just thinks it means to be the best team in the country every year, but he has flat out said That is not what it means. It means to be the best that you can be that day, and every day. And I think, despite his limitations and not living up to what was expected and his 5-star status coming out of high school, I don't think anybody can argue that Cade Klubnik didn't give his all every day. Willie Corn just stepped away from coaching to spend more time with his family. This is another one I don't get. Everybody's always griping about inexperienced coaches. This guy does not have a lot of experience calling plays. For a lot of his tenure with Chadwell was running the offense and calling the plays. It's only the last couple of years or so that he's been the one running the offense. So not a lot of experience there, and none at the Power 4 level. Same thing with Scott. No experience as a primary play caller. Zero. Zilch. And again, like I said about Chad Morris, man, if he was that hot of a commodity and that well thought of, why has he not been running an offense somewhere else all these years? He had to take a volunteer spot on Dabo's staff last year because there's just not a lot of interest there. He was exactly what Clemson needed in 2011, or whenever it was he was hired. But I don't know that he's the guy that you need now. Sure, David Hood knows who the next guy is. Ask him. No. See, somebody else that misunderstood what was said that day. Should Dabo come and say the next guy will be running the Clemson offense, go ahead and write off the 26th season. The Clemson offense is dead. You totally misunderstood what was said that night. And we've had this conversation before, and you're not going to listen to me now any more than you listened to me the last time or the time before that I've talked about this. Dabo, when he brings in an offensive coordinator to come in and install a new system, the plan is for that system to stay in place even after that offensive coordinator's done and moved on. It's kind of like the Chad Morris offense. It stayed in place through the Tony Elliott era. Tony kind of put his own stamp on it and tweaked some things, but it was the same offense. They wanted it to be the Clemson offense. That is what he wanted when Garrett Riley was hired. He wanted Riley to come in and install a new scheme that could, stick around for years, even after he's gone. And it can be the Clemson offense from here on out. It'll be the same way with the next guy. It's not too difficult to look at the plays that are being run now and tell the difference between the plays that were being run 4 years ago, 5 years ago, 6 years ago. There's a lot of very noticeable differences. I just think some people, never mind. Dabo needs to stop interfering with the play calling. What if I told you Dabo rarely interfered with the play calling this year? You'll be like, Stacy, you're not going to believe anything I say. So people think that big old thing Dabo carries around with him is the play sheet and stuff. That ain't even what it is. Yes, drop passes kill Clemson. I don't know that it would have made any difference, man. I saw a lot of guys that I didn't. I don't. They just didn't look like they had any interest in being out there in that frigid weather. Some of those, couple of those receivers, especially, couple of guys on the defensive side of the ball. One team was definitely better prepared for the cold than the other. But again, I don't know that it would have made much difference either way. As of Monday night, TJ Moore has not entered the transfer portal. Oh yeah, I meant to talk about that at the top. Yeah, if you follow me on Twitter, man, my account's been hacked and stolen. I am not in the Bitcoin mining business. I have created a new Twitter account. It's just at JP Priester now, no underscore. X has been absolutely no help in getting it back. Matter of fact, you know, when you cover recruiting and you have to reach out to some of those guys via Twitter, a lot of them, if you're not verified, you can't DM them. So if you cover recruiting, man, it helps to be verified. So I have to pay for Twitter Premium to be verified. I can't even get them to cut that off, to unsubscribe the hacked account. They're going to keep taking my money to an account I don't even have anymore. So I'm going to have to go to the bank and get that straightened out. It's been a mess. Strozier didn't play too bad Saturday. He may be starting to figure out. He's had some moments down the stretch for sure. He's made a lot of improvement since the beginning of the year. If he can take another jump between now and the start of next season, you know, he'll be in a really good spot. Who is available as a hire for anybody's available technically. I mean, I don't think anybody thought Garrett Riley was really available when he was hired a few years ago. I mean, if you go make the right offer, man, anybody's available. Just a matter of how bad you want them. What style OC? I think about as much as I can tell you there is they'll stay with the spread. I mean, they're not going to go to the I formation or anything like that. Again, like I said earlier, I would not expect another air raid guy. Do any offensive players depart due to the Riley firing? I do not think so. I do believe there are one or two that might have departed had he stayed. I got it on pretty good authority that would have happened. Clemson leads the ACC in drop passes. Yeah, Grisham's doing a great job. I didn't know Grisham can go out there and catch the ball for him. That's a focus thing, man. That ain't a coaching thing. Can't go out there and make it again, man. I don't know when we stopped putting any of the responsibility on the players, man. They have no responsibility in any of this anymore. If they don't make the play, it's the coaching. If they drop the pass, it's the coaching. If Klubnik holds on to the ball too long, it's coaching. There's a line to where, man, you got to go out and execute. And if you don't execute, that's on you. That's not on the coaching. Defense looked pretty bad, especially considering I thought the defense held up well for 2.5 quarters. But man, at a certain point, they were gonna give up some points and wear down some because all the depth guys were on the field. There was no depth behind them. You gift them 3 points to start the game with the stupid fake punt. And Clemson had opportunity after opportunity after opportunity to take control of that game in the first half, and the offense just could not do anything at all. If they didn't drop a pass, they were going 3 and out. It was hard to watch, man. To me, that thing falls far more on the shoulders of the offense than the defense. Whoever we get at OC needs to look for a dynamic run and pass game with great speed, deception, eye candy, and misdirection. That's something that I've always thought was also missing from what Clemson's been running. There's not a lot of motion. There's not a lot of stuff pre-snap. None of that eye candy you're referring to here. Not a lot of misdirection. Penn State, what they did the other day, man, they leaned heavily on the misdirection stuff, man, and it works. There's a reason why so many coaches are going to that thing, man, because it works. Whoever the next guy is, man, I hope he's a little more creative than Garrett Riley was. My thoughts on Spiller. Seems he has missed on all of the top tier backs, not all of them. He got Gideon. They wanted easy. They got him. He missed on Jay Lamar this year, but man, Clemson's got a very odd way they go about recruiting running backs, and it's got nothing to do with Spiller, man. This goes back to before he took over as running backs coach. They cast a very, very small net, man. They only offer 1 or 2 guys generally. They want you to feel like you're the only guy they want. Let's put it that way. Sometimes that'll work. Sometimes it doesn't. It tends to work less in this era we're in where everything's more transactional. And then you got to add in that Clemson's not really – they're getting outbid for these high school running backs. So I mean, whether you land a guy or miss on a guy, I don't think the position coach should get near as much blame or near as much credit for whether you land or don't land that guy. Let's put it that way. I mean, there are certain instances where a guy falls in love with his position coach and wants to play for that guy. I think it's happened with a handful of these receivers and Tyler Grisham, but in this new era, man, everything's become more transactional and it's about money. And if you're offering less than what the next guy's offering, then you add in the fact Clemson's small pool that they're recruiting from, those 1 or 2 guys, they're long shots to get anyways. I mean, Jay Lamar he's a Georgia guy, man. He grew up in Georgia, grew up not far from the University of Georgia. It was always kind of assumed he was going to end up there. Go back a couple years ago with Trevor Etienne, everybody and their mama knew that guy wasn't coming to Clemson. He did not want to play in the shadow of his brother. Didn't matter. Clemson or Dabo told Etienne he wasn't going to move on till he decided. Well, he didn't decide till late in that cycle, and there was nobody else to go after. All you could do was go after Andrew Paul, really. Clemson offers Paul, Georgia jumps in with the offer, and that's Andrew Paul's dream school, and he commits. That's how you ended up with Keith Adams. So, I mean, a lot of Clemson's recruiting failures at running back are more about the process than they are about who's doing the recruiting. My biggest gripe with Spiller is the rotations at running back. I have not been a fan of the way these guys were used. Last year, it was all Phil Maffa. He gets hurt, and it was the same thing this year, man. It was all Adam Randall until the second bye week where Dabo or either Garrett Riley, one or both, stepped in and made him start putting Gideon on the field more. I mean, man, I would not be shocked if Clemson was not close to losing Gideon Davidson just because of the way they used him over the first 2/3 of the season. But that would be my biggest gripe with him is the rotations, man. Even last year, like I was fixing to say a minute ago, you play him, you give him Maffa all the carries, he gets hurt. And you keep on giving him all the carries because you've not taken the time or made much effort to get anybody behind him ready. So when he's out there playing with one arm, basically you got nobody else you can put in. And then he did the same thing, for much of this season with Adam Randall. So that would be my biggest issue with him. That is not the playbook that Dabo carries around, man. I'm not saying it doesn't have any plays on it. I'm sure it does. But it's more of a situational thing. I mean, he's talked about this in the past, like when to go for two, when to go for it on fourth down, and certain calls to make in certain situations. It's a lot of stuff on that thing, man. Game management stuff. It's not the actual playbook. Any foreshadowing with Dabo's statement on call? I don't know, man. You don't ever know. I don't think Khan's going to end up at Sanford, though. No. Do I think Clemson pursues Cam Coleman? No. I think Clemson, if they were to need to go after another receiver, it would be a guy like a Tristan Smith. When you've already got so much money tied up, let's just say you get everybody back and you've got so much money tied up in Wesco, Moore, Tyler Brown, the three freshmen coming in. I just don't think it's an immediate need to where you need to waste resources. I think those resources could be better spent elsewhere because Cam Coleman's he might end up being the top player in the portal regardless of position. And I think you've got bigger needs at different positions. Will he let a new OC bring in a new offensive staff, even if it means Grish and CJ Spiller will have to go? No, nor that I think he should. I don't think any sitting head coach ever allows a new offensive coordinator to come in and fire the staff and bring in his own people. maybe one or two, yeah, but not the whole and staff. It's Dabo that has to answer for those hires. He takes the responsibility for those hires. I don't see why he would let anybody else make them. That's kind of how I view that. I asked about 5 weeks ago when we first started talking about Garrett Riley and not coming back next year, 4 or 5, 6 weeks ago, whatever it was, for somebody to provide me with an example of a sitting head coach that allowed his newly hired offensive coordinator to come in and fire the staff and hire his own staff. Nobody ever gave me one. Again, I know, they sometimes bring in a guy or two with them. Like Tom Allen brought his son with him from Penn State. But I can't think of one to where they come in and fire the whole staff and bring in their own people. Dabo really had no choice after that bowl performance. I think the decision was already made before that. Dabo needs to hire an OC who could be the next head coach. Well, I think that's what you thought you were getting in a guy like Garrett Riley, that he was going to be a guy that was going to be a head coach sooner rather than later. Matter of fact, I know a majority of people kind of thought that. It just doesn't always work out the way you think it's going to. I think not having a very consistent tight end really hurt this year and a couple of previous seasons. I don't know how consistent they were. They didn't get really a whole lot of opportunities to really show how consistent they would be. To me, that's another problem with the offense in the past couple of years. It kind of ignores the tight ends, especially in the red zone. I think tight ends had 3 touchdown catches all season. Why is it you think the offensive line was worse than it was last year? I mean, detrimentally worse. Luke can't recruit. Do you think Matt Luke's forgotten how to coach? Honestly, do you really? Number one, look how many starting lineups Clemson played with this year. There was never really any continuity. They've been beat up since the very since fall camp, if I'm remembering right. So you never really had the starting 5 fully healthy. Number 2, and I've said this plenty of times, I don't think these offensive linemen Clemson's currently running with necessarily match up well with what Garrett Riley wants to do on offense. They're not the fleetest of foot. If you watch them get out there and pull, sometimes it looks like they're very slow to react. I'll be more interested to see what this offensive line looks like once he gets his own guys in there. Some of them are bigger, more athletic, a little quicker. But no, I absolutely don't think Matt Luke has forgotten how to coach. I do think Clemson needs to try and figure out why their offensive linemen can't stay healthy. To me, that's what, just the 3rd year in a row now. I mean, I know they were besieged by injuries last year, and I want to say they were the year before that, but I can't remember for sure. But, man, if you can't keep them healthy, you're not going to get a lot of consistency. Are all the commits from Raleigh sticking with Clemson? There's really only one, and that's Hughley, right? And he has told me on more than one occasion. I even talked to him specifically about this a few weeks ago, and he told me he was coming to Clemson for Dabo, not Garrett Riley. Stop paying a coach all this money to watch them graduate first. that is playing. Dabo's been saying that same thing for 10 years now. Nobody cared 10 years ago, but now all of a sudden it's this big problem. That tickles me. Yeah, before the news broke about Garrett Riley, I was going to open this show up by asking if it was baseball season yet. Keith Adams Jr.'s words carry some truth. How so? I just out of curiosity, how so? I mean, he's a 4-string running back. How did he expect to be utilized? There is a reason why every younger back that came in after him passed him on the depth chart. There's a reason for that. You know, I've never really envisioned him as anything more than a short yardage back in a pinch. They gave him a couple of short yardage opportunities last year that he didn't really cash in. One stands out to me right off the top of my head, that Texas game. You know, he was never going to be a key part of the offense this year or next year. Coming out of high school, he had no power offers. If his daddy wasn't a superstar at Clemson, he wouldn't have had one at Clemson. And the only reason he ended up at Clemson was because, you know, they missed on ETN, and then Paul ended up going to Georgia, and they needed somebody to take late. We have way too many former players as support staff. This is a business, not a family reunion. There's a lot of support staffs across this country that are littered with young former players who are inexperienced coaches. To me, this is not nearly the big deal it gets made out to be. They just don't have that much responsibility when it comes to the development of these guys or the decisions in the game planning. They kind of carry out the plans that are put in place by the people over them. And there's very little inexperienced on this coaching staff in the major, you know, assistant positions. I am of the opinion that there's probably a little bit too much meat on the bone there. That the support staff's probably a little bloated, which to me is fine and dandy, 5 years ago. But in this era now where you need to pinch pennies anywhere you can, that might be a good place to look, cut some of those positions. My take on Dennis Love, I don't, from everything I've heard, it seems like a good replacement to me. I don't really know him. I've only met him one time. And then, Kelly, that was last year. But, he's very well respected in that industry. I can tell you that. I am of the opinion that, that for all the good that Joey Batson did in his time with Clemson, man, and he did a lot of good. He's a guy that caught a lot of flack back in the early Dabo years and the Tommy Bowden years. Fans like to point the finger at him for a lot of the problems. But he's done a lot of good in his time at Clemson, man. But there's a such thing as probably being in the same place for too long. And that might have ended up being an example of that. I think a fresh start is probably good for both parties because I think Clemson's program kind of needs a reset. What you're doing, and I've talked about this before, that I think Clemson's issues, run deeper than who's coaching the players and who's on the field. I think they got some foundational things that need to be addressed first and foremost. And the whole program could benefit from a hard reset right now. Think about rebooting your laptop or your phone or whatever. Just resetting everything, man. Resetting the culture, resetting the recruiting process. I mean, just strip it down to the bone and kind of start from scratch. That doesn't mean you can't keep some of the stuff that still works, but there are some things that just don't work the way they did 5 years ago, 10 years ago, that probably need to, be done in a different way. And strength and conditioning might very well be one of those things. Are there any concerns that Naheem backs out of his commitment now that he would have to do more than decommit? He'd have to ask out of his national letter of intent. He's already signed. He moves in January. Golly, I forget the exact date. The mid-years move in early January. He'll be on campus in a couple weeks. I really don't think running back is as critical of a need as offensive lineman. Davidson, Haynes, Green, if they all stay, should be good. If they all have a line in front of them, we need to get a veteran center and a guard. I'm of the opinion Clemson needs a couple of offensive linemen to help bridge the gap to some of those younger guys. You're losing, 4 starters. I'm not a big fan of Harris Sewell being the starting center next year. He's probably going to be, but I'm not a big fan of that. Maybe I'll end up getting proved wrong about that. But, yeah, I'm of the opinion Clemson needs 1 or maybe 2 offensive linemen because I like a lot of those young guys. Man, there's a lot of offensive linemen that aren't ready, after just 1 year or 2 years. They're not really ready to year 3. So, to me, that's a bigger need than running back. Although I do think Clemson could benefit from having a veteran running back. But if they hold on to everybody that's on the roster right now, I don't think – I'm not sure you'll see them take 1. You're saying our QB isn't on the roster. Do we have a guy coming in that could be a true freshman starter? I do not believe so. You have Tate Reynolds and Brock Bradley coming in. I think Bradley, who's been a heck of a high school quarterback, is probably going to need a redshirt year. Maybe the same thing for Reynolds. He pretty much missed his entire senior season with an injury, so that's a whole year of a development he's missed out on. I don't foresee any of those guys, either one of those guys being ready to roll day one. Was Allen given the authority to make his own staff? No. No, and the new guy's not going to be able to – the new offensive coordinator's not going to be able to hire his own staff either. Just doesn't – that does not happen as the way some people think it does. I mean, if you're a head coach, put yourself in the position of a head coach, and you hire this new guy to come in and run this whole department for you, knowing that what happens with him could hinge on whether you have a job 3 years from now. Now, are you going to go out and let him hire all the people to run that department under him, knowing you're going to be the one that answers for those hires and he's not? It just doesn't really work that way. the Penn State punter, man, he was a monster. 300-pound punter, man. When he first run out there that first time, I was like, dang. I thought they were fixing to run some trick play or something. I didn't realize he was the punter. Yeah, he's a big dude, 6'5", 298, something like that. That's my neighbor's house, man, not mine. That's my neighbor's house. I'm just trying to help him sell it. Interested? Telling you now, Jay Haynes being back in the mix will be huge for the running back room. Very impressed with the little I've seen of him. I've never been of the opinion that Haynes is an every down back. For me, best case scenario for Clemson is, you easy kind of turns into what you thought he'd be, and he and Davidson can kind of share the load next year, with Davidson being the featured guy and maybe Haynes as a third down type guy. But you got to get Haynes back healthy first, man. He's had some setbacks in his recovery. He was not supposed to be out all year. They thought they'd get him back sooner than later, early in the year, and it just didn't work out that way. Why not play Vizina some in the bowl game? I can think of a couple of different reasons. If it's me, I'm letting my senior play. That's just me. He's given me everything he's got, for 4 years, particularly the last 3, even if the results aren't what I wanted them to be, I'm still going to give him an attempt to have his, going away party, so to speak. Number 2, maybe I already know that Vizina's not the guy, and there's really not much of a reason to give him a whole lot of looks. Those are 2 reasons right there off the top of my head. Number 3, I'm going with the guy I think gives me the best shot to win. I think they've done that all season long with some of the issues Clemson's had with quarterback play over the throughout the course of the season. The fact that they never once even really considered turning to Vizina speaks volumes to me. Just volumes. What is Dabo's offensive philosophy? Explosive plays, or does it have to be one or the other? I don't think you have to pick it. I don't think that's an either or. Yeah, absolutely. You want anybody wants their offense to be efficient, and balanced to a certain degree, but you can't win without hitting the explosives. I think you got to have a mix of all that. Much appreciated, Dan. Much appreciated, my man. Yeah, we took a lot of flack for that story we put out about Garrett Riley a few weeks ago. trying to. I'm staying away from the ones who I think the next offensive coordinator is going to be because I don't know. I haven't really, this thing popped off an hour before I jumped on here. I haven't really looked much into it. I really have, to be honest with you, I haven't given a lot of thought who the next guy is going to be. So I'm trying to skip over all those and find something that I haven't already discussed. Top positions they focus on in the portal. Defensive backs got to be first and foremost, man. Safety, you need 2 or 3 guys. You need a minimum of 2, maybe 3. I think you need a corner. I think you need a defensive end or 2. You might need a defensive tackle. Outside of Sammy, I wasn't overly, just blown away by the linebacker play Saturday, even though I thought Kobe played, solid when he was on the field. But, man, he's just not going to blow you away with this. Golly, I don't know how to say it without making it sound bad, and I'm trying not to put him down. I guess he's not going to blow you away with the eye test. Let's put it that way. But either way, I still think Clemson needs some depth there. You already lost a couple of guys, a couple of your depth guys to the portal. You only signed one in this class. Might need a red shirt. He's probably more of an outside backer. Only signed one in the last class. He's been out all year coming back from an ACL. Be interesting to see what happens with Jeremiah Alexander next year, man. They could use a breakout season from him. Yeah, I mean, I like Willie Corn, man. My whole point was about people always moaning and groaning about the lack of experience, and I just don't think when I hear people say we need experienced guys, I don't see Willie Corn as that. It's like I said earlier, despite the accolades, I know Chadwell was running that offense for the first few years they were together there at Coastal. I don't remember how long or anything. I think he's been running it since they both moved to Liberty. Corn has, for that matter. I mean, I think Corn has, but where's the line when it comes to experienced and inexperienced? I mean, he's I guess this was his 3rd year at Liberty, so maybe he's been calling plays for at least 3 years now. But again, what's the line between experienced and inexperienced? Do you have to have 3 years of experience, 5 years of experience, 10 years of experience? I just don't know with people anymore, and that's all I was trying to say. But again, Corn stepped away from football. He's no longer the OC at Liberty. Citing wanting to spend more time with his family. Me personally, I mean, I think you can do better. Yeah, that's kind of how I see it. That Clemson offense went away when they brought in Garrett Riley. There was, I mean, even they admitted this outright. There was some things that carried over, but again, a post is a post. A go route's a go route. An inside zone's an inside zone. It's all about how you dress it up. Heck, even Clemson had gotten away from the eye candy and pre-snap movement and stuff even before Garrett Riley got there. But there are some very noticeable differences within the two schemes. But there will always be a Clemson offense. Unfortunately, just think Riley wasn't quite ready for prime time. I think that's a big part of it, man. He Clemson's offense performed much better against the teams that weren't as good. You put them up against some of the better defenses, and those offenses, they just tend to stall out and not get a whole lot going and kind of spun their wheels more often than not. We saw it against LSU. Heck, we saw it several times throughout the season. The scoring, I mean, last year Clemson ranked in the top 20, if I'm remembering right, in scoring offense, man, and they're scoring like 8 less points a game. I'm not even sure they're in the top 70 this year. It's like a substantial drop off. It just seems like the brighter the lights got, the less productive the offenses were. Klubnik just looked a step slower there. That's because he got a high ankle sprain against Boston College. He's never been healthy since. You're right. Is it on the players? But if underachieving players aren't benched, or we don't try to harder to get players that can perform in the portal, then it's on coaching. So, in other words, you want to go get somebody to replace Tyler Brown because he dropped a couple passes Saturday. I'm trying to understand what you're saying here. Or Christian Betancourt because he dropped a pass Saturday. Yeah, maybe if it was, I don't know that I get on board with that. Yeah, I don't have any names to give you for offensive coordinators. Yeah, I never said recruiting was the only issue. I also said I'm not a big fan of the rotations, and I think it severely impacts some of those guys on the roster. I think it holds them back a little bit. I think he did a remarkable job with Adam Randall this year. I mean, I think it's also fair to give him his props where they're due, but yeah, I got some gripes about how the running backs were managed. Since we don't have as much money as other programs, how do we change that? That's an excellent question, man. I don't know of any fundraising plans in place to get more money. I've asked that same question many times on here, or I've talked about the lack of a grassroots effort to kind of raise some money. It's Clemson's NIL effort was very discombobulated for a while. I mean, the collective doesn't even exist anymore. They folded that into IPTE. It's all under the same umbrella now since the House settlement was finalized, and Clemson kind of leans more on the rev share stuff. But let's don't gloss over the fact that there was somewhere in the neighborhood of $25 million invested in the roster this season. There are a ton of teams that don't have that much money invested in their rosters. Don't know if they'll have quite that much. Somebody texted me last night or the night before last, trying to convince me that Clemson's got $41 million in NIL money to spend this year. Oh, I got a good laugh out of that one, but we'll see what they end up with this year. But yeah, I am of the opinion that Clemson could have handled this NIL stuff much better than they have. I mean, at the end of the day, you're not going to have the same kind of war chest that Texas A&M has, or Texas Tech has, or schools like that. But I do think you could have better positioned yourself. I don't think Dabo's messaging on NIL was very strong in the beginning. He really didn't come out and really push it until, what was it, a year ago, 18 months ago, when they really needed to start trying to retain the players for this year's team. And they were able to front load some deals with NIL money before the house settlement was finalized. I think there are a lot of things they could have done better with this NIL stuff. I don't think, even when the collective existed, I don't think IPTE and the collective worked side by side. I think there was a little, pulling in opposite directions there. There were a lot of things they could have done better. Thoughts on Josh Pate ripping Dabo? I don't have any. I didn't even listen to it, read it. I have no idea what he said. I don't pay attention to what Josh Pate says. Matter of fact, I try to not listen to a lot of that stuff, man, because it's nothing against him or anybody else, but I remember a few years ago, man, and when I first started doing this, it's been several years ago now. Man, I watched, all the college football shows, listened to college football sports talk on the radio every day. And that you listen to that stuff enough, it affects your mind, man, and you get away from having your own opinions, and your opinions start to kind of mirror their opinions because you're hearing it all the time. I just rather let my eyeballs do the thinking for me. I don't think he's failed in the last two. No, I think this last one did not work out. Absolutely. But I don't know how you could say that about Streeter. I talked about this earlier. I don't know that he was ever given a fair shake. Number one, he took over the same offense that they'd been running for years. It had gotten a little stale, predictable. And number two, and even more important, he had a quarterback that couldn't complete a forward pass. That severely limits what you can do as a play caller. And again, if Dabo's not able to go out and land Riley, Streeter probably comes back for another year. And we'd have got to see what he could have done with Klubnik. I'm not sure it'd have been any different than what we got, but I'm also of the opinion Clemson's offense needed to be revamped, and I don't know that Streeter was the guy to do that. But I don't know that I'd call him a failure of a hire either. Garrett Riley's already running the offense he installed here, not the same offense that was in place before he got here. Should have a ton more money now that Parker Woods, K. Park, Klubnik, Terrell. Yeah, you're going to have a lot of that money freed up, for sure. Parker, Woods, and Klubnik were the three highest paid dudes on the team. Yes, Mickey Khan is gone too. It was in the same. They put out a statement saying both coaches were fired, or they were parting ways with both coaches. There was videos posted of players taking the subway to practice after missing the team bus. Do you think Saban would have let them play after that? Do you not realize that was staged, man? Otherwise, how do you get the camera crew there? Here we go again. Rumor mill is turning hard. TJ Moore to South Florida. I'm not saying TJ Moore won't transfer. I have no idea whether he will or not. But I bet money that if he does, it's not going to be to South Florida. Jesus, man. So it's the new strength and conditioning coach's fault for what the last strength and conditioning coach has done. I don't know. You're going to have to help me understand that train of thought. I just don't understand it. I don't know if he's been here for 2 or 3 years. I don't know if he's been back for 2 or 3 years. I don't think it much matters. The guy's been here, running what Joey Batson has implemented. Now he gets to implement his own philosophy. There is such a big difference. Ginormous. What Joey Batson was doing has nothing to do with what Dennis Love may or may not do in the future. I think it's extremely unfair to hold the new guy accountable for what the old guy did. Again, I'm not speculating on any names, but you say that are actually still available. Most offensive coordinators, outside of ones that have just taken on new jobs, are all available. Nobody thought Garrett Riley was available when Dabo went and plucked him from TCU. So I mean, it's not like there's any shortage of options. How good can Hughley be? I think Hughley can be a stud. I like him more than I like Tate Reynolds, Brock Bradley, and any other guy on that roster right now. And he's still got another year of high school left. I went and watched him play earlier this year. Man, he's impressive. My opinion on Tate Reynolds, built like a tank. He's again though he missed his whole senior season, and I think that hurts him. He was impressive when I watched him throw at camp summer before last. I mean, he's got a really good arm. He's pretty agile for a guy his size, but I think it hurts him missing his whole senior season. All right, man, I've run way over. We got to wrap this up. Clemson doesn't get a QB out of the portal, do you think Dabo will stick with Vizina at QB or play? I don't think Dabo's a guy that's going to want to play too. He wasn't a big fan of it back when Kelly Bryant and Trevor Lawrence were splitting reps. But it was well known that Trevor Lawrence was the guy and was the better quarterback. But Bryant was so well respected in the locker room that Dabo had to let it play out that way, just so there would be, fractioning of the locker room. But he's not a big fan of two quarterback systems. Why did Dabo bring Riley in as an air raid OC when Clemson's been? Well, first of all, the air raid is a different version of the spread. It is still a spread offense. And it's not like Garrett Riley's offense is full-blown air raid. It's got a lot of air raid tendencies, but it's not full-blown air raid. But it's still a version of a spread offense. I have read a lot from Keith Adams. I agree 100% with his latest perspective. He said he didn't ask to start, but to play more. We do such a bad job developing the next man up at key positions. I disagreed with everything he said. The guy was fourth string for a reason. He was beaten out by every running back that came in behind him for a reason. He actually did get some opportunities in the short yardage last year and didn't do a whole lot with them. I mean, I'm not saying he got a bunch of them, but he didn't do a lot with ones he got. He was never going to get more than garbage time this year. If he didn't know that, that's on him more than anybody. I mean, you are the fourth string running back. They're just not going to make a whole lot of effort to get the fourth running back involved unless it's garbage time in a blowout game. It's like I said earlier, man, no knock on him, man. It's a terrible way to go out when you're trying to hook on, for one last year at a new school, man. You go out throwing your coaches under the bus as a fourth string running back. The first thing these coaching staffs that are looking at maybe having some interest in him, damn, is he going to throw us under the bus too, even if we don't do anything wrong? Bad look all the way around. And like I said earlier, the guy had no Power 4 offers coming out of high school. None. Until right before signing day. After Clemson missed on their top two choices, they take Adams late so they'd have a guy and fill the spot. And if it wasn't for Daddy, he'd have never been. And, if he wasn't a legacy guy, he'd have never got that opportunity. Yes, Cole Turner is hurt. He didn't play at all in the bowl game. Do I think the OC will be an outside hire? Oh, 100% outside. Thoughts on Allen his first year as DC? He needs better players, man, particularly on the back end. The pass rush just wasn't what it was, what everybody thought it was going to be. And outside of Sammy, the linebackers are a little limited. I think that if he gets the help that he needs, that Clemson's defense will be pretty good under him. I mean, it's like I said, Clemson's run defense was top 15 in the country going into the bowl game. That's after they ranked outside the top 100 a year ago. Any news on Tristan Smith's appeal? No, and the longer it takes, the less likely it is you see him back next year. Clemson's going to need an answer on that. They might need it here in the next couple of weeks. I don't know if they'd be willing to hold a spot for him until fall or not, but most coaching staffs wouldn't do that. It makes it a little easier with the 105. Folks still hoping Lagway comes to Clemson. He would not be on my list of guys for sure. If you're going to go to the portal to get a quarterback, you need somebody established and who's had some success and can mentor the young guys on the roster. I just don't think Lagway fit that criteria. Yes, I think there are plenty of viable options at quarterback in the portal. And I don't even think you have to look at the guys like Mestamaker or Hoover or Sorsby or, those top level guys. I think you should look into that second tier. Maybe a guy like Jaden Craig from Harvard, somebody that's not going to command $4.5, $5 million. But we'll see how the market plays out. Maybe they don't end up costing as much as some of us think they will this go around. But the fact that there'll be so many quarterbacks in the portal might drive that price down a little bit for some of those guys. You just have to wait and see how it plays out. But I do agree there'll be no shortage of options. Yeah, I'm wrapping it up. What you want? I can't say one way or the other if they're done. I can just say I don't think they're done. I don't think anybody else will get fired. You might see a guy move on and take a position in the NFL, or a guy move on and take a position on another staff somewhere, or a guy get moved to another position at the school and just not as a full-time on-field assistant. I think you can see any of those scenarios still play out, but I do think if they were going to fire anybody else, it would all happen today. No, I can't tell you who's going to replace Khan. I'll just reiterate what I said earlier. You don't even have to go out and hire a new safeties coach. You got 3 defensive backs coaches already on the team. Really 4. You got DeAndre McDaniel, who coaches the nickels. Khan coaches the safeties. Reed coaches the corners. And then over the back half of the season, Thomas Allen kind of took over the whole secondary meetings, all the secondary meetings. So you really have 4 guys there. I would expect Allen to take on a more prominent role. Maybe he's the safeties coach. Maybe they combine a couple of those positions into one. Nolan Turner could be an option to have take on a bigger role next year. It's not like you have to go out and hire a new safeties coach. I mean, there's different ways you could go about filling that spot. You don't even have to actually hire somebody new to do it. Yeah, I didn't think I never said Chad Morris's offense wasn't exciting. I also think it was a little gimmicky. It was designed to wear teams out by running 100 plays a game when Clemson wasn't really good on defense. I don't think if you're a school like Clemson, I don't think you should have to rely on that to be successful. anymore. Unless you're talking about a Brent Venables, man, I don't know. I'm just not a big fan of going backwards. Zena got left out to dry in his one start against SMU. Coaches took too long to get aggressive with the play calling. It was like that all year, even more obvious in this one. I'll tell you another thing that was extremely obvious in this one start. He was playing against one of the worst pass defenses in the country. Let's talk about what he did against Furman. Let's talk about what he did against BC or North Carolina. Just nothing that was overly impressive. I just don't know. While I think Vizina's probably like a little quicker than he looks because he's a big dude, it's not translating to the field, man. He just looks very slow when he's out, on the move or he's running the ball. I think Clemson needs a guy that can hurt you with his legs, hurt you with his arms. I just don't know that Vizina's that guy. And I take anything that was done against SMU with a grain of salt. There ain't a team that SMU played that didn't throw it all over the field against those guys. Out of 100, make sure I get the number right. Out of 134 teams, only one in the FBS had a worse pass defense than SMU. That was Stanford. Stanford gave up 4 more yards a game. Talking about all the DBs that miss assignments all year long and play like they don't care. I didn't see a whole lot of guys playing like they didn't care. So we'll agree to disagree on that. I did see some frustration set in. Doesn't mean guys don't care. And, go in there when you're watching television tonight. If you got the pause button on your television, man, hit it a bunch of times. Hit it 20 times while you're watching a television show. And I bet you at least twice you're going to catch somebody looking like they're rolling their eyes. At least twice. I think way too much was made of that screenshot. I think Khalil Barnes was a guy who absolutely 100% regressed this year. But I also don't think there's anybody else on the bench you could have played over him. And he's leaving. So, I mean – all right, I got to wrap this up. How quickly can you rebuild if the portal is used correctly? 1 offseason. All right. I don't really see anything else over. I haven't really already talked about. Absolutely. I believe there's going to be a big change in the strength and condition department, how they do things. Yes, 100%. He didn't learn under Batson. Why do you automatically assume he's just going to keep doing what Batson's been doing? I don't understand that line of thinking. Whoever takes the new OC job, they better make sure. Sweeney stayed out of the play calling this season. I know y'all don't like to believe that, but he absolutely did, except maybe the second half of the Troy game. And no, Sweeney does not have to agree to let the offensive coordinator come in and hire his own staff. No head coach does that. I mean, if you're talking about bringing one or two guys with them to join the support staff, maybe, yeah, you can do that. But no head coach that is established and has been in the same job for a while that is hiring a new coordinator is going to let that new coordinator come in and fire the staff and bring in his own guys. It does not happen. You cannot give me one example of it happening anywhere. Guarantee it. Mickey Conley even get Khalil Barnes to remove himself from the portal. Was that? I don't think I've not heard of any friction with Mickey Khan. I've not heard of any friction with Tom Allen. Just because a guy leaves through the portal doesn't mean he's had friction with the staff. It, it I think Khalil was in a spot and where it was just time to go have a fresh start somewhere. I think both parties needed a clean break. Don't know that Khalil was ever fully healthy this year. I'm not saying he wasn't. I'm just saying I don't know that he was. I know he had some hamstring issues that lingered into the start of the season, and I don't know that they ever fully healed. Sometimes watching him play, I'm not convinced that they did. I also think he just got a little frustrated here. Daddy tries to take up for him on Twitter. It blows up, man. It's sometimes it's just best to go and have a clean break. Juju Preston played a few snaps, not many. I never expected him to. I mean, the guy weighs $175, man. He needs another year in the weight room. There is zero chance that Taj Boyd would be named the offensive coordinator. I can tell you that. And I think there's pretty much zero chance of it being Richardson, too, at this point. I have heard Colton Joseph's name linked to Florida State. Kendall Browse just brought his running back and O-line coaches with him to USC. And the O-line coaching spot was already open before he got there. I can't remember about the running back spot, but I also said you might see them bring a guy or two with them, but you're not seeing them come in and fire staff and hire their own. That's not what happened here. South Carolina's offensive line coach was fired weeks ago. There was an opening there. DeAndre McDaniels doesn't go out on the road and recruit. As of today, CJ Spiller is still, hey, what up, Rodney? He is still the running back coach as of today. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think the running back coach is coming from Penn State. He didn't come with Browse from TCU. So, not necessarily true there. If CV is watching this, I would hit the portal. I'm going to tell you the same thing that I told somebody the other day. And I think we talked about this last week because somebody blamed me for kids wanting to lead through the portal or maybe a recruit not wanting to come to Clemson because of stuff I write. That's what it was. I had wrote a story about a kid who was trending away from Clemson. It was Quentin Seifert, the linebacker who committed to Ohio State. A week before that, he had announced his Final Four. Clemson was not in it. And I had wrote a story about him not being in Clemson not being in his Final Four. All of a sudden, some guy comments under that thing on Facebook, recruits see this, right? I don't care if they do or not, man. My job is to report the news. My job is to give my opinions on what I see, good or bad. If you're going to be a starting quarterback at a Power 4 school and you can't take criticism, yeah, you're probably not in the right profession. I think Chris Denson's at least a year away from being ready to be a starter. I'm still not convinced he'll ever be a starter at Clemson, but I think he's a year away at least. FSU showed the blueprint for portal success, and they also showed you the blueprint for portal failure. FSU is the proof that leaning on the portal is a crapshoot at best. Still Dabo's playbook he was calling. It was not. Okay, Dennis Love's been in the strength and conditioning program for 3 years again. So what? What does that? I mean, his job right now is to carry out what Joey Batson has implemented. He is working for somebody. He's not running the department. He's not implementing his ideas. How do you know there's not a bunch of things that he won't do differently that he doesn't see eye to eye on philosophy wise when it comes to, the way Batson runs things? There's no way you can know that. It's just like people crapping on Batson 10 years ago, man. Right before Clemson's national title run, and then all of a sudden, they make 6, all those playoff appearances and win 2 national titles, and Batson never gets his props, man. Even Dabo said he was running the Clemson offense and not his. That's actually not what Dabo said. You just misunderstood. And I've talked about this 2 times on here already tonight. I ain't going back over it. Did you ever think Dennis Love didn't want to go to the Vikings and get shown up? An NFL guy, an NFL team. You know what? Never mind, man. Never mind. NFL teams don't tend to offer strength the head of their strength and conditioning department jobs to scrubs. All right, last one. The biggest change that I would like to see happen with the team next season, I want to see a whole reset, man. There's some fundamental stuff, foundational stuff that I think Clemson needs to hit the reset button on. It comes to some roster management stuff, some cultural stuff, some recruiting stuff. I'm not saying everything needs to be stripped down and changed, but there's some areas that need to be addressed. I think some of the issues go deeper than coaching and players, and if you don't address those, then you're kind of, swinging in the wind. For everybody that tuned in here tonight, very much appreciate it. I want to thank our sponsors over at A-Glass, 2 locations in the PD, 1 in Florence, 1 in Sumter. Take care of all your auto glass needs. Get yourself a free quote today, myaglass.com. For all the latest updates, check us out, ClemsonInsider.com, right back here next Monday, 7 p.m.